Hey guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. All right, welcome back to the program. Dr. Ndumokolo, managing partner at Nextyear, joins me now to take a look at the economics of insecurity. Dr. Nwokolo, good to see you and welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, let's get started. How worried should we be about the new dimension of insecurity that we're seeing? I said earlier that for you to see a female suicide bomber in Nigeria, that's a serious thing. What do you think?
I think we should be worried in the sense that I think the complexities are growing by the day. Suicide bombing is not something people are forced to do. It means these are things the people willingly want to do it. If you look at literature around terrorism, for you to be a suicide bomber, you're convinced in yourself that you want to do it and you may not likely come out alive. So it means that these people willingly want to take the option. So the question we can be asking is, how come Nigerians are now becoming suicide bombers? How come women who we think are of the more humane side are becoming suicide bombers? So these are questions we need to ask ourselves. And if we look at the complexities again, it now means that a couple of things may be involved. One, these people may not be feeling the Nigerian state. So if the poverty is growing, if they're not feeling the state in the sense that there is this exclusion, lack of inclusion, and a lot of things around governance, then any convention from any group means they can take the option. And that's what we're seeing.
Now, how much will it take to get a female suicide bomber to kill herself? Because if from your own analysis now that they are disenchanted with what's happening with the Nigerian state, perhaps they are poor, they don't have the means, how much will it take for someone that is the sponsor of that situation to give to them to say, and they will be willing to kill themselves for it?
First is the ability to do the brainwashing. The brainwashing is the most important thing. And this brainwashing goes through a lot of means. It could be through a religious outlet. It could be through an outlet that's almost like closely knitted together. Now, if we're able to get that, the next thing is, what is the group or the leader offering to this person to want to do it in return? It could be, if you do it and you're successful, we are going to give your family this. And for some of them, they might decide to, for the sake of the family, want to do it. There are cases where people have taken to be a suicide bomber in return to have their families compensated.
By the perpetrators?
By the perpetrators or the people fueling the perpetration. So there are stories around that. Now, if you look at some stories around about dying and going to paradise and, meeting virgins, it's not for women, right? Mm-hmm. It's mainly for men. Mm-hmm. So why would a woman want to do it? So this could be some of the things we'll start asking ourselves. And I think as authority, government need to start looking at that and start looking at it seriously.
Should we be scared? Should we be afraid of the new dimensions we're seeing? Because it's been long we heard about suicide bombings.
Yes.
With the advent now, with this new dimension, should we be scared about what is happening now?
I don't know if I would say...
Is it that should we be scared, or how scared should we even be?
Well, I don't know whether to say we should be scared, because it's not different from what we've been happening. For instance, from our Nextyear data violent base, we found out that between May and June, Nigeria have recorded almost 4,000 casualties, meaning people who have been killed out of violence.
Between May and June?
May and June.
Of this year?
Last year to this year. Okay. That's what we've recorded. Now, out of this, we've recorded almost 3,700 people who have been kidnapped.
Okay, 3,700 people that have been kidnapped. From your analysis at Nextyear?
Yes. And out of this, we have over 4,000 violent incidences in this country, meaning that we are in a situation where nightlife, I'm sure you don't even go out if you want to. Nightlife, has totally been stopped, as in some places. As a transporter, you cannot even jump into your car and tell somebody, I will drive you to this place, because you don't want to, you can apply the routes at a certain time. You know? So when we look at this around our economies, we can start understanding what is happening. We're even talking about the food insecurity out of what is happening in our food basket states. So I am not, it's not I'm worried that we're experiencing suicide bombing lately, because it's not different from the others. But the only worry is the casualties you get when it happens. But it's not equally different from the casualties you get from banditry or the one you get from government attack in the country. All these people equally have high casualties, or farmer-herder conflict in places like Benue and Plateau. So they're all equally the same, 6.5 a dozen.
Did we achieve success in curbing or in reducing insecurity? Because I've watched and I've listened to security experts, both online, both at different fora, say, okay, we've made success. The police, we say, oh, we've made success. You also see the police, for example, catching people, suspects and all of that. The military also speaking that, oh, we are neutralizing so people, we have found these people and all of that. Are we achieving success, or that is just being political, just to tell Nigerians that they are doing well? Meanwhile, Nigerians are also feeling the brunt. What do you have to say about that?
So I would say that the devil is in the details. Narratives are different. Statistics show the numbers. So when you use statistics, you understand, right? When you look at, do a comparison of 2020, 2021 up to this year, and take each of the years against each other, then you will now ask yourself, is what they're saying the truth? Now, you could have made some successes in some areas, but this could be overshadowed by the losses you've equally made in some places. For an instance, if we look at the country as of today, probably farmer-herder conflict, banditry top the list. Terrorism has even reduced in the best states, but other forms of insecurity and violence has skyrocketed up. For an instance, if you go to places like states like Bayelsa, Rivers State, Lagos State, cultism is on the increase. So when you look at it holistically, you will now ask yourself, have we really made successes? But if you pick them individually, yes, the Nigerian security agencies might tell you, yes, we've made some successes in terrorism in the base states, especially Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. But have we made successes in farmer-herder conflict, banditry, unmanned attacks in places like the southeast, and kidnapping, which is on the rise? So if you look at it, then you can understand that probably we do 3 steps front, 6 steps backwards.
How would you analyze the different facets of insecurity that we're seeing now, which you just mentioned? Because if we're seeing, okay, the base states, a reduction of, I don't even want to say banditry, terrorism, as it were, but now we're seeing a resurgence of suicide bombings. Yeah. Then in many areas of the country, there are kidnappings. You just mentioned Lagos now. In Lagos, for example, was it 3 weeks ago or so? Yes. The company Hisense, and is it Hisense or LG or so, their bosses were kidnapped. We don't know if they paid a ransom, yeah. But we could suspect they paid, yes, ransom in millions or in hundreds of thousands of dollars, as it were. Then you're seeing it also in the southeast, the IPOB agitation is still there, or even you're seeing pockets of Mondays still, people don't go to work still on Mondays in the southeast. In the southwest too, there are also farmer-herder clashes, yes, as it were, and even incidences of a kidnapping. So how would you analyze the different components of insecurity, as it were? Is it also being fueled by the same fundamentals or the same origin?
So if you look at it, just like you try to explain, each geopolitical zone in the country has its own peculiarity. For instance, the southeast, we understand what's happening. IPOB agitation, kidnapping, government attack, and so on. If we add the Monday stay at home, which the last time I checked, according to the governor of Anambra State, the Southeast loses about 19.6 billion naira every Monday because of transactions can't go on this day. So you could see what is going on in that region. If we move to the south, apart from cultism, political violence, and so on going on in the region, you could find that this is a region that should be, we understand in terms of the oil we produce, and what's going on in that region should make us to start worrying. If these things escalate, how could this affect oil production in the region? You go to the southwest, you talk about cultism, you talk about kidnapping, and so on. Then the northwest, which is where we have the highest number of casualties now, especially Kaduna and Zamfara topping the list. We find out that banditry continue to grow by the day, you know. Then go to Niger State, which is the north central. Banditry is terrorism and so on. Now, farmer-herder conflict. And when you put all these things together, the answer now becomes an analysis of each of these violence type or geopolitical zone or states shows that we are actually living in a very frightening situation. Because if you look at the numbers of casualties, the numbers of incidents that we are recording by the day, it means that the country should start doing something about it. Otherwise, we are facing food insecurity. Businesses are folding. Now, another part of it is that what is happening is that why these things are happening, it is contributing more to informalization of businesses. Why? Because a business that could grow will no longer grow. It will rather want to stay in a neighborhood and will not want to diversify outside the region. And that is what we're experiencing. And people will not want to invest. Nobody wants to invest in such situations. So that's what we're seeing. So an analysis of all these things, we're not even looking at agriculture, especially as they affect pastoralism and so on. So if you look at this collectively, it shows that the country needs to start doing something and start doing something very fast.
Now, I still want to go back to the other question which I asked in terms of the origin of the different dimensions of this insecurity.
Yes.
In the Southeast, will you say is the same dimension, is the same cause, as it were? In the North, we say, okay, Boko Haram, they are being brainwashed and all of that. Some are also of the school of thought that the people perpetrating this are not even from Nigeria.
Yes.
I was listening to the former Minister of Agriculture, Aldo Ogbe, and he lamented. He mentioned, he said, how can we just be allowing cows and cattle and livestock to just be coming in from other parts of West Africa with the headers themselves with AK-47s and all of that, because there's an ECOWAS protocol. How can we allow that? So there's a school of thought that majority of these people are not even Nigerians, as it were. Now in Lagos, cultism, what is also fueling that? Is it the Boko Haram in the north that is extending there, or what are the causes of this? Is it the economic situation? What exactly? I really want us to dimension it.
Okay, so let's take the main issue. The main issue is governance. Governance is the main issue. Now, someone will say, governance, what do you mean by governance? If you look at the Southeast, for an instance, it started from issue of agitation, and what led to that? Lack of inclusivity, marginalization, whether right or claimed, right? That's where it started. So it was issue of governance that the political elite could have dealt with, never dealt with that, and it resulted into what we've seen today. Go to the northeast, decent governance. There are people who live in Boronu who don't feel Nigeria. They feel that they are rather accommodated by Chad, Cameroon, and Niger. They are Nigerians, but what have we done for them? So that was why when most of these things started, whatever thing that Mohammed Yusuf told them meant more to them than what the Nigerian state was telling them, right? Governance. Go to banditry. The same thing. Issues of governance. So governance is the main indicator here.
Sorry to cut you short. For the issue of banditry, and you're talking governance, how about the machineries that were used perhaps for different purposes. It could be elections. There was a time in this country we heard, I think, is it from Dubai, oh, that they know the sponsors of terrorism in Nigeria. We've heard it times with that number, even during President Jonathan's days, President Buhari's days, but we did not hear the people that are sponsoring terrorism.
Yes.
So how does that component also add up to what we are saying? Because if you've given light weapons out to people for a purpose and they've served that purpose, they have to use those light weapons for something else, for violence.
So there's one book written by a professor from Oxford University. He said, he titled it about bargaining development, how some states win and some fail. States win or fail because the elite want it to work.
Fail. Okay. Yeah.
Right? Nigerian state is where we are because we have a political elite, religious elite, traditional elite that has refused to come together and make the state work. So if as an elite or a group of people, you're arming some people against some other persons, it's part of what we are talking here, right? So these are the things, when you put all of them together, you can begin to understand why I took the indicator governance as the main idea to what is failing in the country. Get governance right. Governance means that Ndo has committed this offense, he has to go to jail. And that's the way it should be. It's not about speaking grammar, because that's the way it is. We saw what's happening in the US election. I saw you're reviewing the UK election tomorrow. The Conservative Party may likely lose the election, not because the Prime Minister did something wrong, but because of catalog of what the party has done over 14 years.
And
right?
the British are not happy about it anymore.
Exactly. And that's how it works in every sane nation where things work correctly, where people vote in or vote out a government because of reasons that are outside ethnicity, religion, culture, or gender. But in our country, it's not the same. So someone can decide to make a law because he thinks it favors his ethnic group, and that's why he's doing it. Someone can decide to cite a government project where it should not be. So these are the kind of things, when you collect them together, you can now begin to understand why insecurity is not just about gun and arms. There are a lot of issues around it, and that's why I kept using the word that the complexity of insecurity has less to do with guns and ammunition. It has to do with governance and the trend of how governance are done.
And the governance now will be a bit wider, because
Exactly.
that governance would be that you're giving economic dividends to people, they don't feel marginalized. Within
Sure.
that governance space is also when people do the wrong things, they are
Exactly.
being punished for it. If
Exactly.
you also do right, you're being rewarded.
Exactly. Including getting people to be part of what a state.
To being inclusive.
In like we say in democracy, the minority will have their say. The majority will always have their way. But the right of the minority to have their say is something you cannot deny.
Now, let's take a look at even the impact on food insecurity. There's a food crisis in the country, whether we like it or not. Of course, FAO, UN bodies have mentioned this over time. I think about 25 million people are at risk of acute hunger in the country. So you might actually say even there's a hunger crisis in the country. How will these new dimensions of insecurity further exacerbate the food situation in the country?
So let me take the issue of the suicide bombing and use it to explain this situation. One, most times people move to suicide bombing, especially where they think that the security arm of the state is beginning to catch in on them. So they try to redefine other means, right?
Okay, Dr. Andu, just hold on a bit, hold your thoughts. I'm being told now that we're having a live broadcast here in Abuja, and we're ready for that. But of course, for those watching us on other platforms, you get to I will continue to watch this. And don't worry, we'll bring you the concluding part of this interview with Dr. Ndumokolo, the managing partner at Next Year, as we'll continue to look at the economics of insecurity. So, Dr. Ndu, please continue with your thoughts.
Yeah, so when the state security agencies are beginning to cash in on a terrorist group, they try to redefine their method of oppression, which will include suicide bombing, like we're
Bombing.
seeing now. So what you're seeing now is that if, like we saw, they've been successful with two, the tendency to up what they're doing will be there. Borno is a state we understand as almost like an agrarian state. Yobe as well, Adamawa as well. So as well as you have almost like a livestock community in terms of the fishery near the lake Chad. So what these guys are most likely to do is that, since they think that the military is cashing in on them, is for them to now start redefining this method of operation they want to use. So part of what they will do is look for a place where you're going to have large number of persons, especially in the markets, and detonate the bombs. And if they do it 2-3 times and they're successful, farmers who normally will bring their goods to those markets will pull out and wouldn't do that. You can connect that to how it could lead to food insecurity. Because food insecurity may not actually be that you're not producing enough. It could equally mean that even when you're producing, you're unable to distribute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And when you're unable to distribute, those food become perishable goods. They will just, and there's a farmer. If you produce, you can't sell. And it happens quite often. You might be discouraged from producing.
So which one are we suffering? Is it that we're producing and we're not distributing? Well, or we are suffering even both?
We're suffering both, yes, because most of these farmers, especially in the Northwest, cannot even go to the farm because the bandits are overtaxing them.
Harvest allowance and co.
And so on.
So are those things still on?
It is still on. I'm sure you heard about what happened in Zamfara recently.
Are there areas in the country where Boko Haram is still dominant?
Not even Boko Haram. Are there areas in the country that I don't even want to call them ungoverned space?
Yeah, ungoverned
that literature
spaces.
of ungoverned spaces, someone like me is now saying there's nothing like an ungoverned space.
Oh,
But
because
if you leave a space ungoverned, somebody will come take it over
Exactly.
and start governing it.
So whether it's a state or non-state actor,
It's being
still
governed by someone. Yes. There are a lot in this country where even the Nigerian army or all our security agencies, they are not there to go to.
Do they know of these areas?
Of course they know.
So what do you think is inhibiting them from taking over those spaces?
A lot of issues. Some administrative, some political, some military, and so on.
Because why I'm also asking this question is about the monies that we've earmarked for insecurity or security architecture in the country. For 2024 budget, I think over 3 trillion naira was earmarked for defense and all of that, the budget of it. I think since 2015 till now, we've had over 10 trillion naira. What's 10 trillion naira? About 12 or 13 trillion naira from 2015 till about 2022, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of security budget.
You know, there's so much opaque about security budget. Never discussed. You never get to know about it. You never get to know who are the suppliers, who are the contractors. Yeah, the reason they will always cite is national security. But in certain countries where things are done, it may not be announced on the floor of the House. But members of the members of the National Assembly understand that and monitor that, and thereby it allows them to do their oversight functions on such on such projects. But here, it's even difficult for the guy who is the chairman National Intelligence to know what the NIA is doing. Why? Because we are still struggling to firmly have our military under civilian control.
What would you have to say about the school of thought that what we're also seeing, the pockets of insecurity we're seeing, is deliberate by the so-called elites, perhaps within the military or the defense space, in terms of allowing this to fester so that they can also make more money? And that brings me also to the question of, if insecurity has become a successful enterprise in the country, how commercial, because it's become a business, as it were. Even kidnappings is a business now.
Yeah, of course.
Everything you see, perhaps we don't even have as much armed robbery as we used to have, because now there is kidnappings. If someone is kidnapped, millions of naira will be spent to release the person.
Because I'm a social scientist, I deal with data. I wouldn't want to say deliberate, right? Because if I claim, I have to prove it. But can I say that there are conflict entrepreneurs? Yes, I would say that. People who benefit from this such situation. So they look at it, cash in on where they will benefit from. I think that's the right word, the right way to summarize
Conflict entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that's a new one. That's a new one I've learned this morning. Conflict entrepreneurs. So they are, gaming on the system and gaining from it. Can the government have control over those kind of people? Can the government identify those people if the government is not even complicit in itself?
So my question would be, who is government?
They will say government is you and I, but sometimes I try to differ because I don't have the authorities of state at my beck and call. For instance, I'm not the CNC, I'm not President Tinubu, for example. I always think that our politicians always tell us when they just want to get out easy that government is you and me. Meanwhile, you were voted in there or you were put in there for a purpose.
Okay.
I don't know if I've answered your question, but...
Yeah, but because government is in the same pedestal platform like state institutions, where things work very well. You have government, you have the public service as a state institution. Government is a state institution. Public service is a state institution. The military is a state institution. The judiciary is a state institution.
I don't have access to all those.
So all these ones,
yes.
For instance, we saw the son of the President of America, Hunter Biden, being tried by the DOJ.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Can it happen here?
No.
Okay. It cannot happen here because we have a system where the government have taken all the powers of all the other state institutions. Government is like a senior brother to these other ones. They all have their rights. And that's why in states where you do not have immunity for the president or the governors, if you do something that is wrong, a commissioner of police can come and arrest the governor. Because he has the state institution that has empowered him or her to execute those laws. But it doesn't work that way.
Yes.
So why I ask that question, who is government, is because we live in a system where one brother of the same mother has taken over the role of every other person and keep appropriate powers to himself.
Okay. Finally, just before we go, what are your recommendations? Can you give me that 2 or 3 on how to solve this insecurity crisis?
The first thing is that we need to have an elite consensus. An elite consensus is where we sit down as a people, whether at the level of National Assembly, whether at the level of the governors, whether at the level of the political parties, and tell ourselves what are our main problem. I'll give you an instance. Yesterday, we saw that the governors of the Southeast came up to say, we want to meet the president to say, release Nnamdi Kanu to us, all right? Let's solve this problem politically. Someone may be asking, but this guy has done this and this and that. But the question remains, are you winning the peace? Or are you perpetuating the war? This has to be a consensus issue. There are places where a state, or a state now, not a government, dropped out of a situation, not because they think they can't win it, but they can't win peace. So they look at it and say, which one pays us more? You release him, you restore peace in the Southeast, and thereby allowing you to stop the killing of military and security people in the Southeast. You can now push those military to where they are well-deserved. So these are the ideas. Elite bargain, where people sit down to say, how do we work on banditry as a collective, as a country? Is the problem because the young people who feel disenchanted have not really been brought in? What can we do?
Yeah. So that means the state governors also have
everybody has role to play, including people like you and me.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Omokolo, for joining us. And insecurity issues are such, it's because it ties all in. We're talking economy, but you can't have a stable economy and a growing economy with insecurity. All right.
You know, they say, like they say in risk analysis, risk is something businesses can understand and want to deal with. Uncertainty and instability is something they don't want to deal with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mokolo. All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Ndu Mokolo, who is the managing partner at Nextel. We've been looking at the economics of insecurity, the commercialization of insecurity in the country, and if indeed insecurity in the country is now an enterprise that's is successful and many people do not want to solve it. I am Nancy Naji. Thank you all for your company today. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. Bye for now. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.